Have you ever heard it said that in marriage, two halves don't make a whole? I love this idea. I think my husband said it. I'm not positive, but he's my favorite preacher, so I'm going to give him the credit. This statement is true in marriage, but it's also true when it comes to friendship. People can truly never make you whole. Do relationships make us happier? They can if they're healthy ones, but even the healthiest relationships cannot fill every void in my life. I believe that you were created with a void that can only be filled by God Himself. The only thing that can truly fill you, truly satisfy in your life is Jesus. In order for us to have healthy, thriving relationships, we have to first be whole ourselves. There have been so many times in my life where I was chasing the wrong people. Times in my life where I was doing everything I could to feel like I fit in with a group of people, and I still wound up feeling left out. And I'm not just talking about middle school. I think many adults have given up on meaningful friendships because you're simply tired of trying, tired of feeling left out, tired of praying to God to help you forgive again because you've been let down by a person that you let in. But what if we're getting it backwards? A friend who can listen to you is invaluable, but often that's all that they can do. If you don't have a living, breathing relationship with God, you are going to feel lonely. You're going to feel like something is missing because it is. What if instead of being let down by others and then going to God about it, you went to God first? You let God in first. The amazing thing about being friends with God is that you start with the foundation that He chose you. We must build our friendships from the foundation up. And the foundation of all of my earthly relationships is built on my relationship with God. You may be super new to your faith and wondering what this even means, or maybe you've been a Christian your entire adult life and you think, well, Holly, that sounds good in theory, but living it out isn't so easy. How do I be friends with Jesus? I want to take a look at a man in the Bible who had an intimate relationship with God, King David. There's so much about David in the Bible. In fact, I did a little research, and one site said that David is mentioned in the Bible 935 times, and Jesus is mentioned 941 times. We get to see David go from boy to man. We get to see him have incredible victories and epic failures. But in the New Testament, David is described as a man after God's own heart, and that is pretty incredible. So I compiled a list of all the ways that I could find that David practiced his relationship with God. Check this out. David inquired of the Lord. David danced before the Lord. David sat before the Lord. David pleaded with God. David asked the Lord. David found strength in the Lord. David did as the Lord commanded him. David went into the house of the Lord and worshiped. David prayed. David sought the Lord. David sang to the Lord. David poured out before the Lord. David confessed to the Lord. David built an altar to the Lord. David walked in obedience and kept the Lord's decrees. David followed the Lord completely. This list does not even include the 75 Psalms that David wrote to the Lord. I guess we could say that among all of these things that we listed here, that David also journaled to the Lord. He wrote out his thoughts and fears and frustration in the form of prayers to God. And you can do that too. Just like we see in David's life. Having a relationship with God means that you don't just run to God when you're in trouble, but you find God in every single area of your life, every victory and every disappointment. He is your source. He is your strength. Without Him, you cannot function. He's the one you seek when you need direction. He's the one you confess to when you mess up. He's the one you celebrate with. He's the one you grieve with. He's the one that you wait on, because when you wait on God, He will show up. He will speak to you. Having a relationship with God doesn't mean that you will never mess up. It doesn't mean that you'll never experience pain or confusion. Having a relationship with God means that you know where to go first. And you also know that there's not a right or wrong way that you can go to God. Over and over throughout David's story, we find this phrase, the Lord was with David. And I want you to know this, the Lord is with you too. The Bible says that he will never leave you nor forsake you, but you have to develop a relationship with him. You have to figure out how and where you best hear from God. You have to know who and what feeds your relationship with God and who distracts you from your relationship with God. The enemy wants nothing more than to keep you from having a relationship with God because he knows that this is what changes everything. Your connection to others can only be as stable as your connection to Christ. And I think one reason why relationships can turn out to be disappointing to us is because we're trying to connect to others before we have first connected to Christ. Some of us are placing expectations and burdens on people that we're supposed to be giving to God first. Some of us are lonely, and we think it's because we don't have the right people in our lives, but really the problem is that you are not whole. You're not letting the God of all comfort comfort you. You're not seeking peace from the very person, the very source who gives peace. We run to all of the wrong places, and then we can't figure out why we keep coming up dry. Jesus said in John 7, "Let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink." When you feel thirsty, if you try to drink from the wrong well, you will stay thirsty. But when you go first to Jesus, when you have the habit of regularly pouring yourself out before him, you will notice that you don't need others to satisfy you in the same way. You'll notice that you have more grace and compassion for the people in your life that sometimes do let you down. Grown-up friendships are meant to complement your relationship with God. He is your foundation. They are your support system. You can't get this backwards. Thanks for watching. I hope that encouraged you today. Make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss out on other videos like this, and I will see you back here next time.